Hello and welcome to the Minutes to Win It podcast. I'm Big Italy 42. He is Jason Gilbo at JGilbo11. Talking about, of course, the NBA slate for tonight. Some key players, minutes going up, minutes going down, things of that nature. Starting off at point guard, Jrue Holiday, as we know, has been sitting out back-to-backs. He's going to be back tonight against the Spurs. Still don't expect him to play a lot of minutes. Still been in the lower 20s just about every single game. But that certainly does take things away from guys like Ish Smith. Tony Douglas isn't a guy that was on your radar anyway, but he certainly should be completely off it now. Ish Smith's still a guy you could throw in tournaments. You could throw either one in a tournament because it's a fine matchup. Spurs don't defend point guards well, but I don't expect more than 26, 27 minutes probably out of either one of them, though.
Yeah, I'm with you there. I just think the mid situation is a little bleak for me to pay up for him in cash games, and especially with Ish Smith and his salary that's on the rise there. You're looking at him; he's 5,600 on FanDuel and then 5,900 on DraftKings. So that's just too pricey for me. And with a minute situation, that's not really clear tonight.
Yeah. Next up, this is going to be a really interesting one. Aaron Brooks out for tonight. Derrick Rose out for tonight. I don't know why you bother having anyone try to guard Steph Curry anyway, but someone's going to have to pretend. So that kind of leaves Kirk Hinrich and maybe Etuan Moore, but I hesitate to even say that he's going to play a ton of minutes. Only played 14 last game, and that was with Rose out and Brooks getting hurt during the game. So really, Kirk Hinrich looks like the guy that's going to soak up a ton of minutes. Close to min salary as a shooting guard on FanDuel, which is nice. Scored 28 fantasy points in 24 minutes against Phoenix. Obviously, that wasn't Steph Curry, but this one just keeps looking more and more to me like it's Steph Curry's going to dominate as long as he just needs to. The Bulls are going to need Jimmy Butler to have a huge game to really compete in this one.
Yeah, you're kind of looking at a possible blowout risk tonight. Maybe the only thing that takes away is just because Golden State had a really tough matchup last night. Not so tough, but they grinded that game out, and coming the back-to-back, the travel back up the coast. Maybe the Bulls keep it close, but if they don't, this one could get pretty out of hand early.
Yeah, so Steph Curry, go ahead and get your 60 fantasy points before this one turns into a blowout. This one, I'll stop gushing about it, but it's just way too good of a matchup for him now. Elsewhere, we've got J.J. Redick out again. We've got Jamal Crawford picking up huge minutes here. Played 40-plus in 2 straight games now. So this is a guy who took 27 shots 2 games ago. Obviously, Chris Paul was out that game. Chris Paul, surprise start last game. He still played 40 minutes. So it's not a great individual matchup against C.J. McCollum, but, Jamal Crawford's locked into big minutes, so it just makes sense to lock him in as a good cash game option tonight.
Yeah, you're looking at 40-plus minutes from him the last 2 games there, and the matchup's nice with Portland. This is one of the higher scoring games on the night. You think we're kind of looking at shooting guard, and we're trying to get at least one value play in there, and Crawford's probably my favorite option just because he's locked in the minutes and definitely going to score some points.
Yeah. Next up, Manu Ginobili out again. Patty Mills, Tony Parker going to see some bigger minutes. Both guys were great last game. Parker's actually been quietly very good for really cheap recently, and seeing upwards of 30 minutes in his past 3 games. He saw at least 28 minutes in last 4. At least 28 minutes in 3 of those 4. So it's a New Orleans team that's a little bit better against point guards with Jrue Holiday in there. He's a much better defender than guys like Ish Smith and Tony Douglas, but still not a bad matchup by any means if you want to take a shot on Parker or Patty Mills as a cheap option.
Yeah, I think so. I just think with New Orleans obviously being pretty close to dead last against point guards this season, although Curry's inflated those numbers twice against them by dropping about 200 combined fantasy points. But they still haven't looked good. They've been torched by Westbrook, but you look at Parker. These values. You gotta like the matchup, and I think on a slate where we're looking for a ton of value with all the high price plays, they're actually really good spots tonight.
Yeah, absolutely. And then elsewhere, if we're looking at the point guard position, looking at some good options, Kemba Walker's still really cheap on DraftKings. I don't know if you heard of this guy, Russell Westbrook, but we always talk about how good matchups are. Maybe matchups aren't great. We saw what he's done against better teams, and you look at this New York Knicks team, it doesn't matter individual matchups, team matchups, no rim protector. I don't even know what adjective to use to figure out the upside for Russell Westbrook in this game because there's not a single player at any position that stands a chance of slowing him down tonight.
No. I think the world, it's stupid. Like, it really is just
Yep.
stupid
It's unfair.
yeah, how his upside is. And, looking at, other point guard options, I know I like Lowry tonight playing against the Lakers, but it's so hard to not play Westbrook tonight.
Yeah, it's going to be really tough there. But, I mean, in cash games, I think you have to do it. GBPs, I'll be the guy once again. I'm not going to encourage you to fade him.
Enter at your own risk.
Yeah, if you make 100 lineups and he's not in a couple of them, that's fine. But if you're making 1, 2, 3 lineups and you're not playing Westbrook, then good luck to you. It's huge upside for him. And just missing a triple-double last time, just missing a double-double even. So 8 and 9, that output he had last game, the 68.25, could have been much, much higher off of 2 more assists and 1 more rebound.
Yeah, get it together, Westbrook.
Yeah, pathetic. We're not paying this price for 68 points, so I demand a 75 tonight. And Russell Westbrook may actually start sweating if he has to get to 75 tonight. Elsewhere, talking about some guys, Will Barton is a guy that if you look at his game logs, saw a lot less minutes last game, just 22 against the Spurs, but looked like they went big, obviously. Nikola Jokic had a huge game, going big against Aldridge and Duncan there. So tend to think he's not going to be quite back up to the 37 he played in the 2 previous games, but probably closer to 30. And, I mean, as far as points per minute go, I mean, he's been tremendous over the last 4 games. One of the better players at any position, really, as far as value guys go. So it's not a guy that I'm too worried about, and a guy that I'll definitely still have some exposure to.
Yeah, I mean, you look at his last game against San Antonio. I mean, tough matchup. He's probably seen a lot of Danny Green, maybe some Kawhi as well. So, looking 9, 5, and 4 there with a block and a steal, it's really solid for 22 minutes. And Price is still not, up to a range where I think it's risky to play him just because of the minute situation. And, I think I'll definitely take some shots, especially with the total of this game between the 2 teams.
Yeah, absolutely. And then looking at some other shooting guard situations, obviously James Harden coming off the best game of this season for him. Shot 37% and scored 84.5 DraftKings points. So if we're talking about ceilings, he obviously has a monster one as well. Eric Bledsoe, you noticed his usage rate going through the roof recently, and outside of the one matchup where he absolutely should have dominated, he's dominated. You look at he's been in mid to upper 40s, if not the 50s, in nearly every single game outside of that Lakers game over the past few weeks. So if you're looking for a guy with a great floor and big upside that's not going to cost you $12,000, then Eric Bledsoe is a great way to go.
Yeah, I mean, that usage rate has just gone up. I think, we were talking earlier, both Brandon Knight and Eric Bledsoe have about a combined 60% usage rate, especially over the last few games of how they've dominated. And, looking at this matchup as well, obviously Bledsoe doesn't have 80-point ceiling like Harden does, but I mean, this is a guy who very well could get you 40 plus with a floor there, and then looking at 50 plus for a ceiling just in this matchup alone.
Yeah, I mean it's monster upside there once again. Looking at a couple other guys, T.J. Warren, P.J. Tucker, 2 guys who have both been productive at times. Obviously, last game we saw P.J. Tucker soak up a bunch of big minutes while T.J. Warren sat out. Played 34 minutes in that one, and it was productive, but took 15 shots, which is not something that he generally does. 6 or more rebounds, though, in 4 straight games for him, and 5 of his last 7. So Tucker got off to a really slow start to the season, but he's a good all-around player, great cash game type of guy to slot in there for cheap. But I tend to think that both guys are going to see their typical mid-20s in minutes again tonight.
Yeah, with Warren coming back, Tucker's not going to see 34 minutes, going to be dropped down to 25. Looking at last game, he shot the ball 15 times. He's never shot in more than 7 this season yet before that game. So he definitely had an uptick in usage there and played more minutes. But for a punt play, I guess I gotta like Tucker. Over Warren just because he gets the start and he's a bit more consistent play.
Yeah, definitely. He's not quite as scoring dependent. Other guys to look at, we're looking at some power forward options here. You got Marvin Williams. You've got Porzingis. Porzingis obviously coming off that monster game, and on a per minute basis, he's been one of, if not the best power forward in I'm thinking football in basketball this year. But you look at his minutes though, and he's only played over 30 minutes twice this season. Granted, both those games in his last 4. He does have that big time upside, but he also, due to the fact that he's probably going to play 26 to 28 minutes most nights, his floor is reasonable considering how productive he's been, but it's probably around 20 points. So really, Porzingis for me, with his price kind of getting hiked up a little bit, he's more of a GPP play, and I'm not saying I won't play him in cash games, but I think guys like Thaddeus Young locked into 35 minutes make for slightly better plays though.
Yeah, I'm with you there. And both those 30-plus minute games both came against Charlotte, who rank in the bottom 3 against power forwards defensively. So, he was just dominating both those games anyway, and we saw his highest ceiling game so far against Charlotte in the last game. Tougher matchup against Ibaka. I'm with you there. Just a tournament play at most for me.
Yeah, and then looking at some small forwards, because I kind of skipped over them there for a minute. Jeff Green, once again, stands out as a nice value play. A guy that has been very, very good over his last 3 games. 30-plus minutes in each one. If we're talking FanDuel scoring, 27, 28, 31 points. So you're going to be hard-pressed finding a better value at small forward aside from, the P.J. Tuckers and T.J. Warrens we already talked about. So really at small forward, this seems like the type of night, if you're paying up, that's the way to go in GPPs because not a lot of people will be going with the Kawhis and the Carmelo Anthonys. But if you go on mid-range, you got a ton of options. If we're talking minutes, Marcus Morris probably going to see 35, 36. Al-Farouq Aminu going to see mid-30s as well. Jeff Green, we mentioned, who's really cheap. Trevor Ariza finally starting to play well. So it's kind of like last year where it was you're going to your small forwards and cash games, you look in that 5 to 7K range, you just lock in a couple guys. But fortunately tonight you got Jeff Green for cheap too.
Yeah, I love Jeff Green. Probably my top small forward option just because he's so cheap and he's going to see 30-plus minutes. Houston ranks 26th in defensive efficiency. They just haven't been great. Houston's going to put up their points and Memphis is going to have to keep up, and that's going to turn to Jeff Green to try and get a scoring going tonight. So definitely look for him to be highly owned, but a guy who you probably need in your lineups tonight.
Yeah, and then power forward, another one of those. Any night where there's Russell Westbrook with no Kevin Durant, there's going to be your value plays are going to be more popular than they would be on a different slate. So the guys, like we mentioned earlier, those guys. Also at power forward, you got guys like Derek Favors and a great matchup against Dallas, who's been terrible against power forwards. Favors had his ups and downs, but overall, he's just shown a lot of upside when he can stay out of foul trouble at least. And then, you got Blake Griffin once again coming off of, I'd say a great game. It was more of a great half, and then the second half it was. It's almost like Steph Curry was playing for both teams. It was just like he'd steal the ball, score, rebound, score. It was the Steph Curry show in the second half. So if you have that game on DVR, you got to replay. That's a hell of a game to watch. That's a good game to watch while you build your lineups, as long as you're actually playing Steph Curry. Because if you're building lineups and watching that game, you're going to start clicking Steph Curry a whole bunch. It was insane. But elsewhere at power forward, Anthony Davis is going to play tonight. Everyone's going to fade him, so I'm not saying it's nowhere near a cash game play for me anytime in the near future, but he's the kind of guy, as someone who's going to have a bunch of tournament lineups, I'll throw in a couple because we have seen the Spurs give up big games to big men. And, we did see last time Anthony Davis was doubtful, maybe not going to play. All he did was go for 36, 11, and 4. So big time upside, low ownership for a guy who has Steph Curry type upside, though.
Yeah, you're looking at the big Harden with his last game, Curry, Westbrook. My favorite play at center, Drummond tonight, has monster upside. So Davis should be, hardly owned at all. I can't really see him being over into double-digit ownerships in GPP. I really can't.
Yeah, probably not. Like you said, there's all of the big upside guys are playing tonight, really. Yeah. LeBron James, but he's been the guy who just goes out and gets you 45 to 50. He hasn't had that 70-point game yet. I'm sure it's coming, but it just hasn't been there yet. But like you mentioned with Drummond, we can transition over to center. The guy's almost averaging 20 and 20. He's averaging 19 and 19 on the season. So this is legit explosion. This is the Andre Drummond that we loved in GPPs last year, except that every game is him exploding for that GPP. You're looking at his worst game against Sacramento, 14 points and 17 rebounds. That was his worst game of the season. It's just insane how good he's been. And his price is up there, though. He's priced like a guy who's averaging 19 and 19. So he probably won't have as high of ownership as he probably should due to his price, but certainly a guy that I'll be getting plenty of exposure to and what amounts to just about as good of a matchup as he'll see all year.
Yeah, I think so. We were both kind of looking at Minnesota really struggling the last couple games against opposing centers. Saw Whiteside have a nice game, and going with the Pacers value centers there, they had a decent production game against Minnesota. So I can only anticipate what Drummond's going to do tonight because it's probably going to be huge.
Yeah, it's monstrous. And then elsewhere at center, of course, Brook Lopez continues to be too cheap at DraftKings. Going to see mid 30s in minutes. Has a good matchup against Boston, who struggled against big men as well. So he's a good option. And then, if you're looking for cheap guys, there's not a lot. The middle range is where I'll likely be going. Joel Okafor, top 10 in usage, seeing solid minutes, and he's been good. Facing off against the Charlotte team as a unit is good, but individual matchups, we're looking down low, and you're seeing guys like Al Jefferson, and you're not concerned about that.
No. I mean, Okafor's price on FanDuel, 6,500 is just a terrific cash game play tonight. You're going to get that 30-point floor from him with definitely upside into the 40s. So 6,500, I mean, you're looking at almost a lock for cash game play, even with a guy like Westbrook in your lineup.
Yeah, I mean, plenty of values that we highlighted that will help you get that. So that'll wrap things up for us here today. Find us on Twitter at DF Cafe. Subscribe to our YouTube channel. Find the rest of our great content at dailyfantasycafe.com.